Good morning and welcome to Get Real
I'm Bill
America.
Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard here on Hump Day. And guess what else we have?
We have the State of the Union
We
address.
sure do. The State of the Onion, yes sirree, from the liar in chief, Joe Biden. I'm telling you, really put the roses back in my cheeks, Brittany.
Yeah, I think that you had a couple of lies that we talked about the other day. I think he
Mm-hmm.
may have hit on every single one of them and plus some.
That's right. Steve Moore, great economist and Fox News contributor, said on Monday, these are the 6 lies that you're going to hear. And we heard a lot more than that, of course, but these are the top 6. And Steve nailed every one of them, reducing the budget deficit by $1.4 trillion. Okay. Number 2, inherited an economy in free fall. Inflation was high when he entered office. He said it was a little over 1%, the lowest it had been since 1969. And because wages were up, we were actually better off than we were in 69. Brought down gas prices, doing all that he can to secure the border and increasing domestic oil and gas production. Yes, sirree. Steve nailed it.
Yep, and the other thing that they mentioned is the lowest employment rate in over 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, you can't claim that if you're paying people to stay home and taking them off the unemployment statistics.
Yeah.
That's not how that should work.
And by the way, when jobs start coming back and people start going back to their job, that's not a new job. That's not a job created. That's just
No.
somebody going in and taking and start working again.
Well, and I love the manipulation of numbers, Bill, because he
Oh
also
yeah.
talks about how many small businesses, record small businesses, have applied for their certificates and their EIN numbers, and it's not true. He Number one, how many businesses closed during the pandemic because of the government? Because the
Uh-huh.
government would not allow them to do business unless you were Walmart or Amazon. Otherwise, you were forced to close your doors. So, I don't think that they take into account all of the data. They just cherry pick what they think looks good.
Mm-hmm. It's just unbelievable. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, it was coming coming to the rescue. Yes, sirree. She was fired up for last night's remarks, and I was hoping all the Republicans were going to do this, but she's coming in with
Although I think she heard us yesterday because that
She may
you talked
have.
about having the balloons there. And
Yeah, I was hoping that Kevin McCarthy at the end was going to, when to have a Nancy Pelosi moment when she tore up Trump's speech 3 years ago. I was hoping that he'd come out from under the desk, have a white balloon, and then hit it with a pin when Biden was finished. And he managed to cram a 5-minute speech into almost an hour and a half. But here comes Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, God love her.
you have to appreciate the fact that she just does things. She does not care.
And it was it wasn't until almost the end of his speech when he talked about China. And the amazing thing was we want to be a competitor. We don't want to be an adversary. And what he was doing, he said, I'm not going to apologize for getting tough on China. Oh, really? We just had this balloon that came across the country for 6 days or more going across, and also for some reason it didn't go over Los Angeles and look at or San Francisco and look at the homeless population. It went over strategic missile bases and Air Force bases. And thank God it didn't get to Kings Bay. At least we don't think it did, but it was probably on the way since we shot it down over Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that he didn't really mention that at all in his speech.
No.
Nothing about that. He had some weird moment when he says something about trading places with Xi Jinping. Like, what is he talking about?
He would love to trade places with Xi Jinping because what Ping says goes.
He would love to be a dictator, I
Oh
think.
yeah. He and his former boss, the Dalai Lama. I remember when this should have been a red flag for that cretin back around 2006 or 8 when he was running for he'd been a senator for 20 minutes and decided he was going to run for president. And they asked him about the Constitution. He didn't like the Constitution because he said it was too confining. It was too limited on what the government could do.
That's the whole point.
The whole point of it. These men lived in an era when the world was run by dictators and kings and queens, and they knew that what power could do when in the hands of just one person. That's the reason they came up with it, to limit government's powers.
Yes.
Government is supposed to serve the people. It's not supposed to tell people what to do.
Well, I think they don't want the people to be free, but they want the government to be free to
Exactly.
do whatever they want. And I think that that's the thing is he gave a lot of lip service last night. He talked about, all of the one thing that he did say that I was surprised because he's been against oil and gas, and he's like, we're going to need it for at least 10 years.
Yeah, at least 10 more years.
That was a very big surprise for me, at least. I was like, what? What did he just say? We need to, clip that out and make sure we have that on repeat.
Do you know how long it takes to set these things up and to go off and exploring and how much it costs for that? Because when they finally decided to, when we finally got drilling in Anwar, I remember the big argument at the time was, well, it's going to take 7 years. What are we going to do? It's going to take 7 years to get that started. That's nothing unusual. 7 years is the blink of an eye in geological terms. It's just we started drilling in Anwar, and we were getting the oil that we needed. We were building that XL pipeline. He stopped Anwar drilling. He stopped the pipeline the first day he was in office, and now he wants to blame the oil companies because he said, "Oh, they're making too much money." Well, the only reason they're making too much money is because they've had to buy back their stock to save the corporation and do whatever limited drilling they possibly can. He got rid of licenses off the Gulf Coast. No more new licenses for that. No more new licenses for drilling on federal land. And now he wants to say that the oil companies were making too much money. And we've heard this argument time and again. And Brittany, I'm going to lose my cookies if I hear Democrats keep talking about how the corporations need to pay their fair share.
They need to start
Corporations
living
don't
in
pay
reality.
taxes. When are they going to? Either they don't know it or they're stupid. There's no third possibility. Companies don't pay taxes. You pay taxes. People pay taxes. When you raise taxes on the corporation, they have to raise the price of their product to take care of it. At McDonald's, for example, they always like to use that analogy. If the price of their cheeseburger was $3.50 today and they raised taxes on McDonald's by 8 or 10%, then the cheeseburger is going to be $4.50 tomorrow.
On that note, the
Yes.
other thing that I thought he said that was kind of bizarre was the non-competes for fast food companies. What is he talking about?
And that some kid could leave McDonald's and go down the street and get more money at another fast food place. He should.
That's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, he should. As one of the congressmen said, he should have been talking about Burger King because we heard a lot of Whoppers last night.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. Well, let's hear some of those Whoppers right now and see what the president had to say.
And how the Republicans responded.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. But I am stunned and amazed. Now, of course, Fox told it like it was, whereas the Communist News Network and BSDNC were just fawning all over. You know what a wonderful speech this was. Wolf
Of course
Blitz,
they were.
yeah, Wolf Blitz at
goodness.
CNN was saying how.
Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you. Look, folks, the idea is that we're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond. Folks,
a test run for the expected 2024 presidential race, and they got nobody in the wings.
No, I think Gavin Newsom is on that hot list, which he's been a train wreck over there in California. But their bench is not as deep as ours. I'll tell you that much.
By no stretch of the imagination. Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State and also head of the CIA, David Weasel is also a famous prominent speechwriter and ghostwriting for Seventh Floor Strategies, what they call it, gave Biden a D for this speech. I give him an F minus.
Yeah, I think that as many lies as he told, I think that we should figure that out. How many lies were actually in there? Because there was, I mean, we had the 6 top lies, but there was so much in there.
Do we have a computer that can go that high?
Maybe. Well, I also think I do love Marjorie Taylor Greene. I know that she is someone that you either like her or you don't. Mm-hmm. But I will say she
tells it like it is.
Yes, she does. I will say I was a little confused by her decision to support McCarthy right out the gate, but, that's her own personal decision, I think, too. But, she had something to say about this address. And she definitely, number one, she wore all white, and then she carried around her balloon. She kills me, Phil. I love to watch her.
Yeah.
She's entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. Here's what she had to say after the speech last night.
I just got back to my office after listening to the State of the Union with Joe Biden. And part of the time we couldn't really understand what he was saying as he was yelling at people, yelling through the applause and mumbling through his words. Some of the things that we did hear didn't make any sense. Joe Biden claimed to care about the border and talked about fentanyl deaths, which is the #1 cause of young people ages 18 to 45, but yet has no plan to secure the border. And frankly, we all know he doesn't care about the border because Joe wants the border wide open. That's the whole problem with Joe. We also heard him talk about McDonald's non-compete fees. Well, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I don't hear anybody at home worrying about these terrible fights between different fast food companies. Joe Biden did talk a lot about communism, though, and controlling private companies, and I think that's something that should concern every single American and every single business owner. I will tell you one thing Joe Biden did lie about. He didn't know what he was talking about a lot of the time, but he did frankly lie, talking about Republicans and Social Security and Medicare. We have not talked about cutting Social Security and Medicare. Joe Biden has been claiming that we're going to cut Social Security and Medicare, but we're not. So we called him out on the House floor. I called him a liar because that's what Joe Biden is. Either he doesn't know what he's talking about or he's just flat out lying. The one thing he did not talk about was the one thing he should have talked about. He should have apologized to America for the Chinese spy balloon that he allowed to traverse across our country, spy on our military bases, spy on our food factories, spy on our cities, spy on our entire country. They knew about it on January 28th, still allowed it to enter our airspace, spy on our country, and never did a damn thing about it until it left our country on February 4th. Joe Biden is weak. Joe Biden can't stand up to China. Joe Biden cannot protect our country. He can't protect our borders. And Joe Biden doesn't know anything he's talking about. That's the state of our union.
Yeah, and how much are we spending now with the Navy off the coast of Myrtle Beach and Surfside Beach or just up the road from us here, and having to go through like 90 feet of water to get some of this stuff. And by the way, notice and they shot it not only over water but over salt water. You know what salt water does to electronics?
It destroys everything.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. So we're not going to get a whole lot. And believe it or not, cringe Jean-Pierre was on The View. So you've got the 4 most stupid women on the planet.
And then you add the 5th.
Yeah, and they were, it made me want to drink a 5th.
Yeah.
But she was on and said, "Oh, we knew what was up there because we were blocking all these signals and we knew what was going on." Oh, please. It's not against the law to be stupid, but for God's sakes, cringe. Don't abuse the privilege.
Well, and I've heard some of her rebuttals lately, and I'm like, she's starting to sound like Biden. She doesn't even make sense anymore. I'm just like, what are you even talking about?
Well, she's reading it and reading it poorly. You notice she's never talking anymore. She's reading from her this book that she comes out with that would make the Oxford English.
Yeah, worst press. Like, when are they going to let her go? But then who would we get? Like, that's the other question. So
Yeah, be careful what you pray for.
yes,
And Psaki was pretty bad.
you know what? But she was a good liar.
Yeah,
At least she was a good liar.
She was great. Oh man, she was.
We'll have to circle back to that.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that one. Yeah, Miss Circleback. That's for darn sure.
Yes.
But Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
She is quite a
rock
young
star.
talent here.
Yeah, and her rebuttal. I've never heard anybody talk so much about the loyal opposition, shall we say, that they used to call it, remarks to the president's speech. Hers last night, she did not gill the lily or bite her tongue. Most of them do.
No, and we're going to look at that right after the break.
Sure enough, that's coming up.
At Get Real America, we'd like to thank the Southeast Georgia Republican Assembly for all their efforts on making a difference in our communities.
When you're looking to buy a business or sell a business, the experts at Best Business Brokers have you covered. Whether you're ready to cash in on your years of hard work or you're taking that first step in buying a business of your own, they're here through the process and make sure you get the best outcome possible. By having Best Business Brokers assist you when you buy a business or sell a business, they handle the legwork of the intricate process. This ensures a smooth transition of ownership, allowing you to get to work immediately or receive payment for your business as soon as possible. With base operations in Savannah and Charleston, they service all of Georgia and South Carolina. If you're considering starting a business here, the mild winters and 5-tiered economic areas make these the perfect places to do so. If you're ready to buy a business or sell a business, then you're ready to contact Best Business Brokers. Visit their website at b3brokers.com or call at 912-349-0940.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard on this hump day, and especially after we had to put up with the president's State of the Union speech last night. Sarah Huckabee Sanders just elected as the governor of Arkansas, and the daughter of a former governor of Arkansas, and she told it like it was.
Yes, and she is the first female to lead Arkansas, and she's also the youngest governor that we have in the United States. So she's quite impressive, Bill.
Boy, she really is what she had to say about Mr. Biden's speech.
Sanders. Being a mom to 3 young children taught me not to believe every story I hear. For not believing much of anything I heard tonight from President Biden. From out-of-control inflation and violent crime to the dangerous border crisis and threat from China. Biden and the Democrats have failed you. They know it, and you know it. And it's time for a change. Tonight, let us reaffirm our commitment to a timeless American idea that government exists not to rule the people, but to serve people. Democrats want to rule us with more government control, but that's not who we are. America is the greatest country the world has ever known because we're the freest country the world has ever known, with a people who are strong and resilient. 5 months ago, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. It was a hard time for our family, particularly our kids, Scarlett, Huck, and George, but we kept our faith and persevered. Thanks to exceptional doctors here in Arkansas, a successful surgery, grace of God, I am cancer-free. Through it all, I couldn't help but think about my mom. She was 20 years old and in her first year of marriage when she was diagnosed with spinal cancer. The doctors told her she might not live, and if she did live, they said she'd never walk again. She did walk. She'd definitely never have children. The daughter she was told she'd never have was just sworn in as the new God and is speaking to you tonight. Adversity and fear of the unknown can paralyze us, but faith propels us to charge boldly ahead. We can't stand still in the face of great challenges. You and I were put on this earth for such a time as this, to charge boldly ahead. I'll be the first to admit, President Biden and I don't have a lot in common. I'm for freedom, he's for government control. At 40, I'm the youngest governor in the country. And at 80, he's the oldest president in American history. First woman to lead my state, and he's the first man to surrender his presidency to a woke mob that can't even tell you what a woman is. In the radical left's America, Washington taxes you and lights your hard-earned money on fire. But you get crushed with high gas prices, empty grocery shelves, and are children to hate one another on account of their race, but not to love one another or our great country. Whether Joe Biden believes this madness or is simply too weak to resist it, his administration has been completely hijacked by the radical left. The dividing line in America is no longer between right or left. The choice is between normal or crazy. It's time for a new generation of Republican leadership. Upon taking office just a few weeks ago, CRT, racism, and indoctrination in our schools. Eliminate the use of derogatory term Latinx in our government, repealed COVID orders, and said never again to authoritarian mandates and shutdowns. Americans want common sense from their leaders. Washington, the Biden administration is doubling down on crazy. President Biden inherited the fastest economic recovery on record, the most secure border in history, cheap, abundant, homegrown energy, fast rising wages, a rebuilt military, and a world that was stable and at peace. But over the last 2 years, Democrats destroyed it all. Despite Democrats' trillions in reckless spending and mountains of debt, we now have the worst border crisis in American history. As a mom, my heart breaks for every parent who has lost a son or daughter to addiction. 100,000 Americans a year are now killed from drug overdoses, largely from fentanyl pouring across our southern border. Yet the administration refuses to secure the border and save American lives. And after years of Democrat attacks on law enforcement and calls to defund the police, violent criminals, while law-abiding families live in fear. Beyond our border from Afghanistan, from North Korea to Iran, President Biden's weakness puts our nation and the world at risk. And the president's refusal to stand up to China, our most formidable adversary, is dangerous and unacceptable. President Biden is unwilling to defend our border, defend our skies, and defend our people. He is simply unfit to serve as commander-in-chief. And while you reap the consequences of their failures, the Biden administration seems more interested in woke fantasies than the hard reality Americans face every day. Most Americans simply want to live their lives in freedom and peace. But we are under attack in a left-wing culture war we didn't start and never wanted to fight. every day we are told we must partake in their rituals, salute and worship their false idols, all while big government colludes with big tech to strip away the most American thing there is, your freedom of speech. That's not normal. It's crazy, and it's wrong. Make no mistake, Republicans will not surrender this fight. We will lead with courage and do what's right. What's politically correct or convenient. Republicans believe in an America where strong thrive in safe communities, where jobs are abundant and paychecks are rising, where the freedom our veterans shed their blood to defend is the birthright of every man, woman, and child. These are the principles Republican governors are fighting for. Washington, under the leadership of Senate Republicans and Speaker Kevin McCarthy, we will hold the Biden administration accountable. Down the street from where I sit is my alma mater, Little Rock Central High. As a student there, I will never forget watching my dad, Huckabee, and President Bill Clinton hold the doors open to the Little Rock Nine. Doors that 40 years earlier had been closed to them because they were. Today, those children once barred house are now heroes memorialized in bronze at our State House. I'm proud of the progress our country has made, and I believe giving every child access to a quality education, regardless of their race or income, is the civil rights issue of our day. Tomorrow, I will unveil an education package that will be the most far-reaching, bold, conservative education reform in the country. My plan empowers parents with real choices, improves literacy and career readiness, and helps put a good teacher in every classroom by increasing their starting salary from one of the lowest to one of the highest in the nation. Here in Arkansas, and across America, Republicans are working to end the policy of trapping kids in failing schools and sentencing them to a lifetime of poverty. We will educate, not indoctrinate our kids, and put students on a path to success. It's time for a new generation to lead. This is our moment, our opportunity. A new generation born in the decades of the last century, shaped by economic booms and stock market busts, forged by the triumph of the Cold War and the tragedy of 9/11. A generation brimming with passion and new ideas to solve age-old problems. A generation moored to our deepest values and oldest traditions.
How eloquent.
And she was very specific on the things that she was going to
Exactly.
do, not just like, I'm going to save education. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a plan there. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we did not hear from our president last night.
No, just spend more money is all he talked about.
Yep, that's basically what it gets down to. He also didn't really mention Ukraine, which I thought was interesting. One thing that I think that needs to happen, he needs to come and explain to Congress and to the American people why we need to continue to fund the war and be involved.
Oh, we had the ambassador. I had her and talked about how wonderful, that we're, too good for Ukraine. We to hell with our military, but by God, we can send them all of our equipment that we have.
Well, and it was really interesting, and maybe this isn't anything to think about, but at the end of his speech, he said, "And God bless our troops." That was the last thing he said. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? And is that an indicator to how many troops are actually going to be in Ukraine fighting this war without Congress's approval? Because that is a requirement. Not be having boots on the ground anywhere unless it's approved by Congress.
And unless they're vaccinated.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, well.
All right. We'll be right back.
At Get Real America, we want to make sure that the real story gets out, and you can help us as a sponsor or as an advertiser.
At Get Real America, your business to our conservative audience.
At Get Real America, we want to make sure that the real story gets out, and you can help us as a sponsor or as an advertiser to make sure that that word does get out to the community.
Be a sponsor and support your local community here at Get Real America.
I don't think it's an accident that I ended up writing music for a living, because I lived in a house where I saw how deep affected everyone in the house. And just how much everyone defined themselves by the music they listened to.
Music as a framework, I think, gave my parents my identity from a young age. You can like any music that you want if it makes you feel happy. And now when I hear certain songs, I think of them, and I think of them in their happiest state, and it makes me...
It seemed like they're having trouble talking about something. I try to tell them about a time when I felt something similar.
Whatever the issue was, we would tell them the pros and cons and how important it was, and that they had come to us because we could always help them. I think the real important point, we always told them, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, we will help you through it no matter what it is.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Hump Day. Glad to have you aboard. And of course, it's the day after we heard from the president. Did you notice how
that was hard for you to say, wasn't it?
Yeah. Did you notice how the Democrats once again stood up for murdering kids? So they want to. He mentioned the Roe versus Wade situation, which was never. Which was never in the Constitution to begin with, but yet they kept claiming it was for the last 50 or 60 years. Wrong. It is not part of the Constitution, and the Supreme Court did not overrule it, outlaw it, just outlawed it and send it back to the states. There are some places where you can still kill your kid.
California being one of them. If you don't like it,
yeah.
California's open to you.
And all these, there are a lot of employers who pay for your trip there.
Including Starbucks, Lyft, Uber,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
all of those companies.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's the reason I haven't darkened the door of a Starbucks in over 2 years now, because of their woke policies. One of the reasons but there are places where you can go where you don't have to kill your child.
Really, Bill?
Yeah,
that's news to me.
I know.
Because the Republicans they don't support women at all.
No, they don't.
So, but I did hear about we have several opportunities here in Savannah alone to help people that are pregnant and maybe don't know if they want to have the baby, or if they don't have this right. I think that sometimes people end up single, they end up pregnant, and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to survive on my own, let alone with a child.
And it's not going to cost you anything. One of those groups about Thrive here for a long time,
Yep.
an organization that is of saving children. And the other one is something called the Living Vine. And it is really something. We talked with the executive director just recently.
Yes, and we were able to. It was actually quite incredible, Bill. I was very impressed. I had no idea that it even existed there. It just looks like a home, and that's what they do. They create homes for women and put them in a program. It's definitely something they have to be committed to, because there are a lot of things that they're not allowed to do. So
Exactly. And the executive director, Karen Beasley, is here to tell us more about it. All right, first of all, welcome to the Living Vine. Tell people who you are.
Hi, I'm Karen Beasley. I'm the Executive Director of the Living Vine Maternity Home here in Savannah, Georgia.
All right, Karen, what's your background a little bit? How did you get this job, and what appealed to you?
Quite the background. I started out educated as a school teacher, taught for 18 years, off and on. Went into working with nonprofits. I'm from Kentucky, and managing and directing a nonprofit environmental group and education group. Spent some time doing other things, just not working for a while, and started on the board with the Living Vine as invited to be on the board by some of the board members, and got into it really learning about, as like a lot of people didn't really know everything we did here at the Vine. And wasn't very long on the board that we were looking for an executive. We had been without an executive director for quite some time. And I had the credentials and the background and the experience, and that just kept coming around like, and we were struggling. And so I fought it kicking and screaming, because I didn't feel like I was really the person to lead a ministry nonprofit. But I'm so glad that God pushed me into this position, and it's been a blessing every day. Hard, but a wonderful blessing.
A lot of people are stunned to find out God ultimately knows what he's doing. Isn't that right?
Yeah. He really does, if you just listen.
Yeah, it's all right. What part of Kentucky?
I am from a small town called Russellville, Kentucky, which is right outside Bowling Green, Kentucky, and 60 miles north of Nashville, Tennessee.
That is beautiful area.
area.
And did you teach there?
I taught there for 10 years, and then I taught here in Georgia. Well, I've taught everything. I taught first and second grade in Kentucky. When I moved to Georgia, I got into middle school, taught some special needs for a while, and then I went to high school and taught child development. So I say I've taught every different age group and every level, which is, further training for what you do later in life.
And what drew you here?
I think the passion to help others, and seeing the struggles and the trauma and the issues that people go through, that we oftentimes want to say, it's just, they made bad decisions. But the women that are here didn't just make bad decisions. They're here because life led them into these decisions. Being able to help protect them and prepare them and empower them is a gift. It's a ministry that is a gift. And hopefully help them to, they've chosen to do the right thing and birth and care for this child, and helping them become mothers. As a mother myself, I just feel like it was a needed good thing. It was good work.
Now, the Living Vine, it's not unique. I presume you've been familiar with other homes or facilities of this nature.
That is correct. So we are not unique, but we are unique. We are the first licensed maternity home in the state of Georgia.
Really?
We are the licensed maternity home in the state of Georgia that takes underage and anyone over 24 as well. We take women of any child age. When the Vine started in 1996, they had a younger group of ladies that came through. Some were supported. Some were in situations where, they came out of hardships, and once they got pregnant, they were removed from their homes and not allowed to come back. And that was where this really started, pro-life, and giving those mothers who were going to have these babies and make that good choice to do so a place to go. So there are a lot of maternity homes. They look very different. Licensing from state to state looks very different. In Georgia, there's just been a new law passed where a maternity home doesn't have to require all the licensing that we require if they don't take underage. There's a different licensing procedure for that now,
Right.
which opens it up for more ladies that are that over 18 age, but a lot of them won't take them over 24. We've had them from 12 in this house, and we've served over 465 ladies and babies, and each and every one is special and a blessing in every way.
What was the genesis of the Living Vine here? How did it start?
It was started with some very wonderful founders. Claire Hodges, deciding founders of the Vine. They worked with many churches in Savannah they felt a need to...
So it wasn't just one church?
Not just one church. Okay. At the time, I'm sure Southside Baptist,
Mm-hmm.
Calvary, a lot of the just community smaller churches that were very much into the belief of the pro-life like they were. They saw a need that there are mothers, there are girls that needed a place to go, that had nowhere to go. And quite honestly, back in there was also girls were sent here from families that supported, so that they weren't aborting babies but had a place to go while they were pregnant. And many of those babies, I would say, almost every one of those babies were adopted. Those girls did not come back after they had their child. We didn't really see them again, and the babies were most often adopted. And then we went through a period of time where it was like, the Vine just wants to, take babies and adopt them out, which really was not what it was at all. So we really kind of shifted and changed how we did things. We do support. We just don't make that decision for these ladies. That's something that's private in them, but we do provide all of the resources if that is something they indicate that they want. In 2019, we became a transition home, meaning that our license changed from just having maternity pregnant mothers to they could come back and actually spend time here with their baby. So they can spend up to 2 years here after, if they've chosen to work the program. And it is work. It's an emotional work. It's a commitment to be in this program. This is not a shelter. We say that often. It looks very different from a shelter. Call us up and say we have a pregnant mother. They have to be somebody committed to wanting the preparation along with the provision and the protection that we provide. The preparation is what's key to their future, to helping them become the mother they need to be and be able to self-sustain and empower them to do so. So in 2018, that changed, and we haven't had a girl come in over 3 years. Not because we don't do that, just because they're choosing to be mothers. And so it's our job to help them be the best mother they can be. And if you've never been mothered, mothering's not easy. You don't just know innately. It is sometimes you've got to have help with that. So this is a house full of staff that loves in a Christian mentoring way the ladies that are here. They are under a very distinct program. We call it our Women of Excellence program. They come in before 32 weeks, and we do that in order to have some time before the baby gets here to really give them those life skills. If they don't have in the last year, twice there's been someone knock at the door and want to just come in and say, this is where I grew up. And that is very touching. So I say this house has always been meant for ladies. The only way a boy's coming in or a man's coming in is if he's birthed here. So we let them visit sometimes, but it's a home for women. It's a home for ladies. It always has been. And in 1996, the founders that purchased this had the heart for this to become this type of ministry for women who are choosing to birth their children, and it's for 26 years we've maintained that, and it's all been by the grace of God.
How many people accommodate? How many moms?
We are licensed facility for 14. We have 6 rooms for residents. Before we became after, we could have 2 girls in a room. Then the 2 extra license, we really didn't have room for that. Once we went into transition, babies become residents, so it takes 6 girls, 6. And then at one point we did bring in some mothers that maybe already had a child, but they can't be over 2. We've gone through a lot of change. First time to have an executive director in 3 years or so. and a lot has changed here, and we're really trying to refine our programs and train our staff in how to really care for these residents and these babies. And having a mother come in that has a child, we have no child care facility here, so it makes it very difficult for her to be able to really get immersed in the structure that we're trying to provide and the restructure of how to do things that we try to provide if they're not able to do that. And I don't really have the staff to help with that. So right now we aren't taking anyone that already has a child till we can grow this back to the way it needs to be that. So 6 girls, 6 babies. So
How do they find you? How do they become residents? They can't just walk in off the street, can they?
most have advocates. They advocate for themselves, or they advocate through pregnancy centers. Sometimes it's through DFACS. Oftentimes, and most often, the ones that we have now are coming through the internet. Social media and the internet is just so important to this type of work, and they're coming from everywhere. These are not just local Savannah. We've had them from New York, Oregon,
Really?
and different. We take all, race, religion, nationality, and we take them from everywhere because we're here to serve. And it takes a special girl who wants to come in here and participate in this program, because they're really giving up a lot of their freedoms. Our average girl right now is mid-20s to. So these are women who aren't teenagers, and we kind of pull them back to the teenage years and really structure their life, and that's very hard to give up and to follow if you've not been subjected to that. So
You have, and how long can they stay?
they can stay for up to 2 years, but it really depends on them. If they are not receiving what's being in the right context, if they're not really working the program and trying to better, once there's somebody else that's going to come along that needs a spot too, and when you can only take 6, you have to be very particular about it. But sometimes they get to the point where this is just too much for them. They don't want to be guided and structured like this. They want their freedoms, and they can leave anytime they want to. But if they choose to stay, they can stay for up to 2 years.
And you have restrictions on things like electronic devices. You have get-togethers and that sort of thing.
We have no cable in this house. The ladies do not have internet access outside the classroom. Phones or computers, all those things. All of that gets taken. For the first 2 weeks, there's no other than family contact or their advocate contact, and they can do that through a landline phone. We really just take away all those things. Sometimes it's for protection. Sometimes, and most often, it's just for purpose. It's to restructure.
I understand cars too.
No resident has a car. We transport them everywhere they go, whether it's have 4 at a time going to 4 different jobs and 4 different daycares, and our vans are rolling. So we take all that away. We really immerse them in focusing on themselves and focusing on learning how to do things, new structure. And it takes taking all that away. And then we give it back. We eventually give it back. They do have certain times of the day they do get their phones. Their freedoms on that. We take them on outings. They do get from family if they're on their advocates, that they can take them out on Saturdays. But those are a process of earned time once that we feel like they're ready to go back out and to do those things, because you can kind of restructure and retrain the way somebody is feeling about themselves, and then they can go right back into the same environment, and you've just undone everything that you did. So it takes some time. And I tell them every day, this is a gift of time. This is the time for you to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it and what kind of mother you want to be, and given the opportunity to go make that happen.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security, and trust. For more information, thepoweroftheshield.com.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Version here of Get Real America, and we're getting ready for, I think the Super Bowl is on Sunday. And it's going to be taking place out in Arizona, and the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and it should be a dandy. I want to see a good game. I got no skin. I really didn't have much skin in this game until just recently, when of all things, my granddaughter, became a rock star in our view, and also for a particular teacher of hers at Davidson Day School up in Davidson, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte. She and a friend of hers got together to get a Super Bowl ticket for their favorite teacher, who's a huge Eagles fan, and we had him yesterday. All right, well, it is an honor and a pleasure, and almost a bit of a surprise here that I'm talking to my very own granddaughter, Natalie Tavermina Monroe. Natalie, wave to the sitting there with her friend Claire Mitchell, and also one of the English teachers up at Davidson Day School in Davidson, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte, that's Steve McGill, who is an English teacher at Davidson, and girls. With you, tell us, you and Grace, tell us how this all got started. You decided to send your teacher here to the Super. That's no small feat. So tell us what was the genesis of all this, how this all came about.
Okay, so our teacher, Mr. McGill, he sings Fly, Eagle, Fly, like every single day. And like, we've always knew that like he's been an avid Eagle fan. And so, so it was just a random thought on a Tuesday to just like, I guess, send him to the Super Bowl, but we didn't really know how like we were going to do it. So, I texted Grace, and then we got together later that night and we stayed up till like 1 a.m. just scheming on how we were going to pull it off, you know? And so, so we sent out a bunch of emails to like all the parents, all the alumni, all of everybody that was to support it. And then next things next, we had about like $2,000 in the GoFundMe. And then we knew it wasn't going to be enough. So then Grace had a good idea of posting to TikTok. And then after we posted the TikTok, it got like 600,000 views. And then people just started donating from like random places like Canada or the UK. And there was just a bunch of $5, $10 donations. And then we like hit our goal, I think within like 60 hours of 8,000.
Yeah, that's amazing. What did you think of all this? How did you get involved as far as thinking, well, you know, the Super Bowl's only a couple of weeks off and, you know, tickets are scarce as hell. Yeah. How did you manage to pull it off?
I think just reaching out and using our resources, we really just, social media is a thing. So once we kind of like took off on TikTok, it was like just donations, just people wanting to support him and want to like see his reaction and like see him go. So I think just like the overwhelming support, multiple people just enabled more people to keep donating, like wanting to see him there.
Well, Mr. McGill, I am so impressed. You must have touched a chord with kids, and this has to come as a big surprise to you. This is one of those bonuses of when you teach kids, you know, you're sort of immortal. Okay, Mr. McGill, I'm just gonna. You have such a way with kids. That I mean, to do something like this is a very magnificent on their part. You must have found a way to have touch a chord with these children.
Yeah, well, these two have been very special to me. The time I've known them, because they put in the work and are very open-hearted, open-minded people. But you know, as a teacher, you're always, and I think personally, the connections I make are more important than the lessons I'm teaching classroom-wise. Although both are important, I think that the relationships you build are more far-reaching. And so I don't really try to go out of my way necessarily to build connections. It's kind of just my personality, you know, and I feel too, especially, it was like, you know, just the amount of thoughtfulness just to come up with this idea and then to, you know, explore it and put hours of work into it. I'm still trying to take it all in.
Yeah. To Mr. McGill, how about this? I had to keep this a little bit of a secret for a while, but eventually you had to had to tell you.
With social media, it's hard to keep anything a secret. So I did catch wind of what was going on because a couple of alumni had come and were like, "Hey, I hear you going to the Super Bowl." I'm like, "What?" Going on, and plus the administration here had to let me know because of rules we have about gifts to teachers. So even though I knew about it, assuming it wasn't going to actually happen, but I was still very grateful just because of the kindness of their efforts, you know. But I didn't know it was actually going to happen until yesterday.
Well, why are you such a big Eagles fan? How did that all come about?
I was born in Philadelphia at University of Pennsylvania Hospital. I was raised out in Glen Mills, about 30 miles west of the city, and I had super big sports fans, especially the Eagles and the 76ers. I have two older brothers and an older sister. So I was the youngest, and so I grew up in it. And so I have known nothing else but following the Eagles and the 76ers in particular, and the Phillies and the Flyers to a lesser degree. And so it's impossible for me to root for another team. The Philly teams are my team. That's it.
Did you play football yourself?
I ran track coach. That's the sport that I've pursued, but football too violent for me.
Well, Natalie and Claire, I understand that you hit a snag once you got the money collected. That there were Mr. McGill just mentioned that might have prevented him from actually accepting this.
Yeah, there was like a little bit of an issue with the school and stuff and all of the policies. But after the situation got so big and it reached so many people, to come to a decision that it would be almost stupid not to let us do this for him.
Through the Alumni Association or something that actually his grandfather was the original owner of the Eagles franchise or something? Well, you can say that, yeah, but Grace, how about you? Did you know somebody who knew somebody or something like that?
So our dean of students of the high school, she reached out to Goldie, and she graduated in 21. And her and Mr. McGill were pretty close too. And Miss Taylor reached out to her mom, and she replied back really fast saying, like, we've seen the TikTok, we're already working on this and stuff. So, yeah.
Well, it's just amazing. So, Mr. McGill, when do you leave?
Grace, Sunday morning.
All right. So, have you got any about this? I know that I've contacted Will Kunkel at the Foxville affiliate there. I've let the Fox people in New York know, and hopefully they'll do some sort of a feature on you before. I think this would be a great story for the pregame, because, pregame starts maybe in about 15 minutes. They do a lot of that stuff. So, anybody else talk to you yet?
Yeah, we're in contact with them right now and stuff. They're gonna see what they can do. But we've been talking a lot about the pregame party and what they can arrange for Mr. McGill.
Friends called the Eagles headquarters, and she was basically just giving them the backstory on Mr. McGill, and they, without even mentioning it, said they had already seen the TikTok, and so they forwarded her straight to one of a person there, and so we've been emailing them.
Very good. Well, Mr. McGill, I'm impressed. There are very few teachers that I can think of, a couple of teachers that have meant so much in my life that I would go out on a limb for and do something nice like this for. But I think this is remarkable. You're certainly to be commended for how you inspire students, not just these two, but I'm sure that you inspired them all down the line and will continue for years to come to a degree that you probably will never know in many cases.
Yeah, thank you. That's very true. How much influence you're making.
That's true. Listen, it ain't bragging if you've done it. So my mom always said, if you don't toot your own horn, ain't nobody going to toot it for you. Thank you for what you do, Natalie. I couldn't be more impressed or more proud of what you and Grace have done here. That this is just amazing. Thank you. Full disclosure, Natalie's my granddaughter. I'm just so proud and pleased of what you kids have done. This is very impressive, and I know that you're going to have a good time out there, Mr. McGill, and go Eagles.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Ladies, it's Mr. McGill. It's an honor. I feel like I know you personally already, so thank you very much, sir. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, though.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. God bless. Imagine liking a teacher so much you've raised $8,000 to send him to the Super Bowl.
Not only that, I think that this is just, it's nice to see this. I mean, because we talk about all the bad stuff a lot of the time and all the things that are going on.
But we like to talk kids.
Well, and it's heartwarming to see that people care about someone other than, especially in the social media and the TikTok generation that we're looking at right now. Congratulations on a great granddaughter.
Yeah, just remarkable what they've done. And I've notified Fox News and because Fox is carrying the Super on Sunday, and I notified some friends of mine up there, and Janice Dean, who is a chief meteorologist but also does great radio segments called The Dean's List, where she talks doing good things. She wanted Natalie's phone number, and I said, this is going to be a great pregame feature for you guys for the game. And also notified the Fox affiliate in Charlotte, and they got back to me and said that they were going to be in touch with them too. So he said, I hope you haven't told anybody else. I said, well, I'm going to have it on my podcast, and I did tell the Fox people in New York, but I'm giving you first rights there in Charlotte. So I hope that they'll do something. So Will Kunkel, sports director at Fox 46, go and get that story. I can't wait to see it.
Yes, and I'm so glad that we got to have the opportunity to have this on our show, something positive, and, we need to start having a little bit more fun.
Yeah, for sure, especially after that downer last night from the State of the Union, but telling us how wonderful everything is. But really, when you get down to it, when you see these kids like this, maybe you have a little more faith in the younger generation. Yes. All right. Well, that's going to about wrap it up for us. We'll be back tomorrow to continue to change and save the world.
Yes. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Get real.